On this episode of Interview with a Pro, I had the chance to sit down with none other than Cornelius Dammrich. Considered one of the greatest of all time with Octane, each one of his images requires months of dedication, and it shows. In our conversation, we break down his process for creating incredibly detailed images, see behind the scenes of his most recent release, You Touch You Buy, debate the value of NFTs, and discuss the impact of AI on 3D art itself. At over 2 hours long, this conversation is chock full of incredibly useful tips. Without further ado, here's Cornelius Dammrich. I wanted to first figure out, how do I introduce you? And so I actually typed in to ChatGPT, who is Cornelius Dammrich? And it says, Cornelius is a 3D based artist in Germany who is well known for his work using Octane render. It's likely that he has a strong understanding of the software and is able to create high quality photorealistic images and animations with it, which I thoroughly agree with. So hello and welcome to the channel.
Hello, thanks for having me. I didn't know ChatGPT knew who I was. I don't know. I never tried that with myself. Or actually, no, I tried. I think I asked it to write a Wikipedia article about me, but it was all wrong. It was just wrong information. It was just like I'm a sculpture or something, and I thought, yeah, okay, that's maybe the generic thing that sounds like a Wikipedia article, and it maybe picked up that I'm some sort of artist, but it was all wrong.
Well,
I think impressed.
I was very impressed. I was like, oh, what's the worst that can happen?
Yes.
Whilst I was going through, I was looking on your portfolios, looking at everything, and I was like, I wonder what ChatGPT thinks. And turns out it knows you very
nice.
well, and I think it's a very apt description of you, from your work, from your most recent work, You Touch You Buy, which is absolutely incredible. Hats off, and I'll be putting it in front and overlaying it if that's okay, because
Sure.
It really is for me, I think the pinnacle of what you can achieve with this type of software, and it blew me away, but it's also super inspiring for me as a beginner, because I want to keep pushing myself, and even just being able to speak to you right now is something that still shocks me. So,
oh, you're so kind. I don't know what to say.
So, before we get into it, I don't know if you want to give a little introduction to those who might not know who you are, but I'm pretty sure everyone on this channel should know who you are.
Okay, so I'm Cornelius. I'm 34 years old. I'm from Germany, and I'm a 3D artist for 19 years now. So,
wow.
Yeah, I started when I was in 8th grade, I think, roughly that time. And yeah, that was 19 years ago, and now I'm sitting here all day in front of my computer and doing 3D stuff all day.
And I wanted to ask, really, like, when you first got into, did you know that this was the track that you were going to be going down, or is this something that you kind of fell into?
Yeah, I never. So I didn't start that with like the thought of having a job in that field. I think back then we had to do like school internships, and I did one at at like a company that did dental stuff. Like they handcrafted like prosthetics for elderly people and stuff, and I thought like maybe something like that, and then I did one in a bakery and in a print shop, and so I thought I would have just like a very regular blue collar job, because I was super bad in school. And in Germany, like in the early 2000s, everyone was like, yeah, if your grades are bad, if you don't have that paper that says you can do this and that, you will absolutely get no good job in any industry.
Wow.
So yeah, and like when I started with like this 3D stuff, there was no big community around that. It was really a niche and small, and like I was like in online forums that were like gfx24.de or something like that, and it was just like that super small community of people who just did, I don't know what, like stupid stuff. You couldn't even get like, there were no freelancers really in that field. Like you have to date as like thousands of 3D freelancers. We didn't have that back then. This was just like the early 2000s. It was just very basic, very non-professional. It was just also the effects you saw in movies, like it wasn't at that level really. It was just all very
So
basic
did
stuff.
it even
So
feel like it could have been a career at that point? Or was it
no, it
mainly...
was more like it was just fun. Like I thought I didn't even have like like I knew okay they kind of do that for games. I don't know how though, and I didn't know how to figure that out and was just playing around with that. It was really just an after school activity, really. It was just like coming home from school and instead of playing GTA, I don't know, 3, it was playing C4D, like a cracked version of C4D,
Yeah.
and was okay, well let's find out what that button does, and then it did nothing, or I don't know. It's just like it was like stupid fun. Also, I was like in this community where we did like a ton of these. We called them GFX murals. It was just like we had these interface elements. It looked like Winamp skins. You know Winamp, the
Yes.
audio software
So
from back in the day, and then you could have like there were like skins for that, and one was like for example that big green hat and that had the music player buttons on it, and it was just like super weird. And we kind of did that, but without the functionality behind it. So we had like the play buttons, but we never programmed it so it could work as a skin. We just had fun
making
creating
it...
the images for it. And me and my friends back then, like my internet friends, we did like I don't know. It was just like, I did a new website design, a new GFX enter splash, I don't know, something, and it has 1000 layers, and it was just like the metric of greatness, how many layers you can have in Photoshop. It's just super stupid. So, and
How
I
many
don't know,
blending modes you use to create yours? Yeah.
we did that. I did that for like the first years, I think. Something like, and it started like in some forum when that I offered like the service to create user icons for other people. And that's that. So there was no, hey, that's gonna be my career in a few years. There was just curiosity and yeah,
I'd love to know,
fun.
what was that turning point?
Um, like at some point, someone bought one of these graphics from me. That was like a one-time thing, and that was I got like 400 euros for that, and it was just like a lot of money at that time for me. It was like wow, and then I spent it all on video games, I think.
As you
And
do with your first paycheck, you know. You're not
yeah,
supposed to buy something normal. You're supposed to do something
yeah,
that...
and I think it became like kind of serious like after school. So I finished school after the 10th grade without any like major thing that would get me into university. So I did like an after school thing for 1 year that would get me the next higher stage
Okay.
to enter a school that then would give me the qualification to go to university. And so this is a little bit complicated. So everything you can do in school if you're a good student, I did afterwards. So, and one of the school where I got the degree that would enable me to go to a university, that was a school that has had its focus on graphic design, and was so at this school I would get it's called in Germany, it's called Abitur, which means A levels.
Yes.
So that's like you need that to go into university, and at the same time it's like I was an apprentice in graphic design and got that like state apprentice for graphic design, and they told me all stuff about InDesign, Photoshop, Illustrator, and video cutting, editing, and everything, and how a camera works and audio stuff. And that's just like a thing in Germany. Just you can do that, and if you start in a company at a young age, like with like 18 or something, you're usually apprentice for 3 years, and then you have that title media designer or something.
Okay.
So that was like the first time that I met people in real life that also had an interest in graphic design stuff. And it was never like the stuff I did, but it was just like, okay, they do something with Photoshop as well. They do something with 3D as well. And yeah, I met a friend there, and we actually found like we had a company together, like it's like a small company offering web design services at like the age of like 19, 20, around that time. And that was like the first time it went like kind of professional, but not really. So the first job we did, we were ripped off and we had to sue the guy. But we never got the money back.
So you left empty-handed. You did all this work.
Yeah, we did a website for him. No, 2 websites actually, and he ripped us off. That was the first experience in the working world.
I think when you start and you don't know about a 50% deposit, you know, you don't know about charging up front.
No, and also it was just like super. Like, I don't know, back then I thought, yeah, that's gonna be it. Like, I want to work in an advertising agency. I thought that, like, I had that glorified idea that, like, I don't know if you know the movie. It's called 99 Francs. It's like a French movie about an advertising agency. It's really, really well made. It's, I think, like quite old now. Like, not quite, like 10, 15 years maybe. And so I had that glorified image that like graphic designers or like creative directors are some sort of superhuman.
Yes.
And it was like, I thought, hey, that's gonna be it. And then I did an internship in a design, in a graphic design company thing, like in an advertising agency, and it was horrible. And yeah. And with the years, like after that, then I studied communication and design in the university, and I just slowly figured out, okay, the career I started might not be the most fun.
Yes.
Because I hated working for others. That's pretty much, I'm really bad at working for others. I was always I sucked as a freelancer. I'm not a businessman. I try to become one, but it's just not me. I started 3D and all that stuff I do not because of making money with it, but if you have to pay rent,
it helps.
That's
it
helps.
It also helps.
So you kind of need to have like some sort of some sort of connection to at least negotiating stuff and like, or like know your way around like making money with the stuff you do or that you offer. And it's not just fun. So when that turns into a job with deadlines and you do your part and people are like, well, I don't like it and I'm paying you, then you have to change it. And it's all of a sudden it's not that fun anymore.
Yes.
And so I was like, okay, well, I don't know, I remember with my very first employment, when I was employed after I finished university, that was in 2012. I was there for 7 months, and after 2 weeks I was already Googling like for alternative careers. like hey, I actually applied, like I think 3-4 weeks in, I applied to a video rental company, that like one of the few remaining shops that rents out videotapes, like movies and stuff, because like, and it was like, yeah, okay, let's just do that.
Yeah, you just wanted anything else.
I was like Googling what is the job field where are the most happy employees, and it turns out that's gardening. So if you go out, like people who take care of graveyards and stuff, they are the most happy folks because they are outside all day. They don't have to work in the winter. It's the perfect job, apparently. I was like seriously considering just dropping everything and be like, yeah, well, that's not for me.
Well, I think at least I could say I'm so glad you didn't go down that route, because at least you now have some amazing work to talk about.
I mean,
and at least
the possibility that this that can still happen, right? That I never will do that professionally again. So, like, I will always do it as as a hobby, but like that, where people come to me and say, "Hey, we pay you this and that, and then you create this and that for us." I really don't like that, and I turn down 90% of all offers I get. Like,
wow.
really, because I am so bad at it, really. So, and it's usually people come to me and they want stuff that really does not align with the stuff I have on my website. That's also very confusing to this day. So it's like the best way to promote yourself is to put the stuff on your portfolio that you want the jobs for, right? So if you like to do interface design, put a lot of interfaces on your website, and then people hire you for that shit, right? I put all the cool stuff on my website, and I get hired to, I don't know, do train stations for German railway company or some stupid, like, I don't know why, guys. I can do spaceships and shit, and like LAN parties and kitchens that are messed up. Why don't you hire me for that shit? And it's and it's to this day, I always, people, when I get an offer, we want a music video for an EDM, I don't know, and I don't really look like an EDM music video kind of guy, right?
I guess it's nice that you know what you like and you haven't had to bend, because I think that's something that I'm struggling with at the moment, is that whole having to make the work that you want, or having to make work that you want to portray to other clients and other brands. But it seems like you've been able to at least stamp out a way for you to avoid that trap.
Yeah, well, 2017, I had to start at a company because I couldn't make enough money with freelance work anymore. So that's one way of doing it. Just be an employee, and then it's, because then you have like the paychecks and everything, right? And then after that, what really saved the thing was NFTs.
Amazing.
Like, because when you sell, I made, with one sale, I made more money than I could make in like 3 years of employment. It's incredibly lucky.
Yes.
Of course. It's not something you can like calculate with. But still, it happened.
Yeah, but it's also something that you, unknowing to you in terms of where, if you think about the value of 3D from a market cap perspective, you were just doing this because you loved it and you wanted to create your own stories, I'm assuming. And it was just these two things aligned at that perfect time where your skill set matched the absolute...
Really weird,
yeah,
right?
like at this moment in time, of course you would cash in. Like,
what are the odds? I told that to a friend the other day, like 3 months before that whole NFT thing started, like when you could read about it on Twitter for the first time, and like 3D artists that start talking about, oh, there's like this new thing, NFTs, I apply here and there, and who you can sell your digital art stuff. 3 months before that, I had like the chance to create like a extremely high-res print of that dirty kitchen I did like a few years back. And the guy that was like, he owns like furniture stores, luxury furniture stores in Cologne and the area here where I live, and he offered me $300 for it. And it was like, no. I'm sorry. It's not gonna cut it.
When you consider the value of that piece now, or any of your
yeah,
future pieces.
I mean, even before then, it was just like I always had that feeling that like digital art is a joke to most people. It's just sad. I don't know. It never felt like it's at the same level of like fine art. It's because it's digital and people don't understand how to do it. Like fine art, you can always say, yeah, well, there's the guy, he has a brush and he paints it and he's like really good at it, and people get that concept. Digital art, like I remember in my first job, in my first employment, the clients thought it was like architectural visualization, so we would just build buildings before they were actually there. And the clients always thought they send us the plans, the building plans, and we just scan them in the computer, press a button, and that's that. That's how they thought we're gonna do that. Because they had no concept of how digital art works, that you are like, you model stuff and then you assign them textures, and these textures can be 3D scanned, and there's like a million workflows and a million different pipelines you can do stuff, and there's like, it's all super technical and like, but there's like the basic understanding on how this works is just not there.
No.
And I've always felt like, okay, and people think it's easy and it's a joke. It's not that hard. It just sometimes takes a lot of time. And then there's this rendering. I mean, explain to your parents what rendering is.
I've tried.
I don't know.
It's impossible.
Yeah, well, you press a button and it calculates the light and the shadows, and then they're like, yeah, okay, then.
I don't think they realize how intense.
Calculate away, my child. And it's just not really. Yeah, I don't know. And it always felt like it was just a joke, and people didn't take it serious. They're always like. And you have to explain it to them like, yeah, that's the stuff they do for Pixar. You know Pixar? And everyone knows Pixar,
Yes.
like Toy Story and shit. So that's 3D stuff. And I do that too. And then they're like, yeah, so you do movies for kids. And I'm like, no, I do dirty kitchens, but not just one image. I was like, oh, okay.
I think there's like a sliding scale really of like, for me, you know, that dirty kitchen, I would never, like at my current level, would take me years and years and years and years and years to even try and get to something like that. Yeah. To them, they just look at it and go, oh yeah, because they will never have that understanding of how much time it takes to put every single
or how you even start with that.
Yes.
Or some people say it's like a painting, some people say it's a photograph and I painted over it, or some like all the combinations. I've heard it all. And 3D artists say, well, that's a waste of time. And it's like, yeah, I mean, it's all of that. I don't know.
I think on your point about the value of 3D, it's quite an adjacent point where I was reading about, say, Spotify and what that has unfortunately done to the value of music. Do you see parallels, or do you think NFTs have changed the perception of the value of 3D art?
I don't think NFTs are not that widely adapted yet. It's also not just 3D art. It's just like, I mean, there's digital artists are usually people who do 2D stuff or 3D stuff. And the NFT topic tends to be more attractive to 3D people, it feels like.
Sure.
So you have, on the one hand, you have all these like very abstract artists that feel more like they are like crypto natives, really, and they did that whole crypto thing for a long time before NFTs were there. And then there you have like these 3D artists, and then there like all the guys who did everydays, like the Beeple stuff. There were that was like a trend, a big trend before, like when Beeple really blew up in the 3D community. There was just like hundreds of young artists who did the same thing, do the 3D artwork every day. And it feels like these guys all adapted the whole NFT, like for example, fuck render. You know fuck render?
Yes.
Yeah, or I think Ness for Ness Graphics, Alex Ness. He's also, I think he or Philip Hodas. They all did these everydays, and they generated their following through that. They are pretty much they're pretty known through that, and yeah. So I think they just the NFT space just absorbed that. Just
Sure.
all the everyday artists are now NFT artists, and there were like these guys who did like concept art for movies. Some of them ended up in the NFT space, but not all of them. Like not the it's more 3D guys, and yeah, but it's still NFTs are not really adapted in the wider audience. I think that's still pretty niche. There's also like a big like many people don't like NFTs because it's a technology that is ill used. It's just the same thing with AI right now.
Yes.
So you have AI as a technology is a cool thing. There's nothing good or bad about it. It's just like a tool, right? Then there are people who cash in on the tool and use it and use data sets to train their stuff, and it's stolen art, it's unethical, and then it becomes a messed up topic.
Yes.
The same thing goes for the NFTs. You have NFTs were bad for the environment. That's the first thing. Like they are not anymore. Like at least the Ethereum ones are not anymore because we had the big merge, right? And then there were like a ton of scams where people or scammers just stole digital art from other people, minted that into big collections and sold it, and pretty much scammed people out of their money because people were like, NFTs are there to make quick money. So you buy something, then you flip it, and then you get rich. And people burned their hands with that. And that's why the general, like if you ask like someone who wasn't really active in the NFT space and just heard it from the sideline, pretty much all they know is, okay, that's just like guys selling pictures of apes and they're trying to get rich with that, and that's NFTs.
Yes.
There's also
in a nutshell.
yeah, but there's also in a nutshell, that's the face of NFTs. But there's also very smart artists who do that stuff, like their work for the bigger part of their lives now, and that's their way to make money now. And it's just they sell small editions. They never sell 10,000 pieces of one and the same thing, or I don't know. It's just like there's so many factors and so many faces of these NFTs that are not that. And yeah, that's a sad thing. And I think until this won't change, it's gonna take a while.
And
before people see digital art or NFTs as something that is a way for normal artists, not scammers, to generate income. And
yeah. I think anywhere where there's money, it will attract bad faith actors, just as it will attract the greatest artists and designers. Or there's probably technologies that it's going to be implemented.
Sadly, that's true.
And it's sad. And I think you're in a very unique position where you can speak directly as an artist selling and, funding your life through this platform.
And so everyone watching, I can assure you, I'm not a scammer. I mean, I'm selling them with my clear name. Like everyone knows, they can look me up. I'm a real person, and it would be stupid if I scam people now, because the police would take the police a few minutes to figure out where I live, and and I'm pretty genuine with my art, and I'm doing everything but scam people.
Exactly. And overall, from a learning perspective, I think this is where it is quite confusing, because there's, like you said, there was an influx of people jumping into this. I just saw this for me as a natural evolution of me going from a 2D motion graphics designer to a 3D motion graphics designer. And then as I came into this, was at that intersection of NFTs, the everyone going wild, your daily renders, and it was completely overwhelming, where
Yeah.
I didn't know what to trust in terms of what's going to forward me in the right direction.
I still don't know.
And it's so difficult to build on, to get truthful knowledge as to what's going to make you grow as an artist. I think that's what I wanted. Is that water bottle a chili bottle?
So that's a gift from my wife. It's so in Germany we have a company called Hella.
Is it ketchup?
Yeah, they do like curry ketchup, right? And that they also sell merchandise as a drinking bottle that looks like that.
That's brilliant. That's so good.
People sometimes think I'm like chugging ketchup. Yeah, but
I thought it was
not ketchup; it's water.
I thought it was chili sauce to start with. I went, okay, if that's how you get pumped for an interview, you know, I can't.
Yeah, that's a conversation starter.
But on this, I think the point I was trying to get at with learning about NFTs and coming into the space, for someone that is starting out, where do you think they should put their attention?
And learning. Not NFTs.
Okay.
So if you start out with 3D or digital art, whatever you want to do, just learn it. Don't do that I mean, that's hard to say. Like, back when I started, there was nothing like that. There was no serious money in that field. At least for my age and everything. There was just like unobtainable, right? And I think that's where the magic is. When you start with something and you never have even the slightest idea that this could be a profession. So you just do it out of sheer curiosity and interest. And that's where the magic happens. That's when things spark, right? I think that's very healthy to view it not as hey, I'm gonna learn a few 3D tricks now and then I'm gonna be a rich NFT artist and make billions. It's probably not gonna happen. Making it in an NFT space is very much dependent on a ton of factors. One of them is luck.
Yes.
I know people who are extremely good at 3D, extremely good, and nobody knows them in the NFT space. Nobody. And they have a big following even. And everyone in the 3D space knows them, but they're not known in the NFT space. So, and that happens.
Yeah.
Like and also there's like, it's so many factors that can influence that. So I wouldn't count on that.
As
just
put that to the side.
If you want to do that as a career, the most important thing is to have some sort of fun with it.
Yeah.
There's never, I guarantee you as not you, but you as the viewer who is starting out with 3D, there is no famous artist in any field, be it music or anything, that started out with the idea of, hey, or maybe they started out with the idea that they're gonna be rich and something, but at least the least thing they had was fun doing it.
Yes.
So if there was this quote from the keyboarder of Rammstein, Rammstein, the metal band from Germany, and he said, once you do something for money, you ruin it. So
interesting.
He's doing and it's well, to a certain degree you can agree with that, but it's I think all the people I know who are good at what they do, they enjoy that thing they do because it's fun. They have it. They are playful with it. They try things out. They're curious. The most fun moments in when I do an image or anything is just oh, I wonder what happens when I do this. It's always this, oh, I wonder what would happen. It's just like putting a firecracker in a plush toy or something. It's just like stupid curiosity, like being a child again. oh, maybe I can, like, I did like the super stupid experiments back then, like a few years back, where I had like a photogrammetry software that you use for 3D scans, and I feed it with already 3D rendered data. I just wanted to see what it looks like. I don't know. It was just like stupid.
Did it
There's
look
no
good?
like forgot, probably not. But I was like, I had like a 3D scan of a head, right? And I put it in a black void and did like a matrix of cameras that pointed to it, like a globe, and then rendered them all like in an animation. And then I had like a million, like, I don't know, or not a million, but like hundreds of renderings of that 3D head, and was like, hey, that's perfect data, because there's no, you don't have camera shakes, everything is lit the same. It's like actually that what you would feed to a photogrammetry software.
Yes.
I was like wondering, okay, now we have the perfect data, so let's see what the perfect use case, like the perfect outcome is when you have perfect data for photogrammetry software, right? And I fed it into there and was just playing around. And that's these moments, like stupid curiosity. That's so important. That's the most fun. And that's what it's about. So if you're like a student and start off with 3D, just do stupid shit. Like do a cloth thing that falls through a donut, or I don't know, just like I spent so many countless hours doing cloth simulations and like just doing, yeah, now it falls down this way, now it falls down this way. Look, it's cloth in 3D. Oh, I did that. It's so much, that's so cool. And that, keep that curiosity. Don't think about, oh, it's gonna make me money and I'm gonna be rich. That's just the stuff you get money for. It's probably boring as fuck
Yes.
most of the time.
Yeah.
Like, or if you can do NFTs, of course, you can do everything, but it's luck. It's like saying I start playing the guitar and I'm gonna be the next Metallica. It's probably not gonna happen, because many, 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 many young people tried that, and
And I think
it's
I just wonder
unlikely.
how many guitars are spread across the world, and it's one of those.
I know, I've been there.
Oh yeah, same. I've got mine
Yeah.
literally in its case right now.
I bought 3 guitars over my whole life so far, and a bass guitar, and was like, yeah, I'm gonna be the next whoever, right? And I always wanted to be a rock star without practicing it. I hated practicing it. But that's the thing. You have to enjoy that in a way. You can't just stand in your studio or whatever and pose with it without being able to play it. It's the same thing. If you just want to be good at 3D without actually having fun learning 3D, that's not going to work, I'm afraid. It's the same thing with painting. I bought an iPad Pro for thousands, like 1,000, like way too much money for years ago. Was like, yeah, now I have that cool tool. That's one of the best things you can have as a, like, many of my friends who are concept designers, and like I have friends who can paint like God could only paint. It's incredible, right? And they just sit there and paint, and it looks like amazing. I can't do that. And was like, yeah, now I have that iPad, and that iPad magically makes me gonna paint like that. No, you have to practice it for years. That's just a tool. That's a really cool tool, but that's it. And it's the same with a camera and everything. You have to have fun at this thing.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, it's not gonna work.
And it's one of those things where you almost got to not realize you're doing it. Is something that I've taken from this. It was the same with me for, say, photography, or even just spending time with software. And moving on to your tools, I had a dig through your Instagram comments just because I wanted to see, what do people ask? What do people asking Cornelius? And it seems to be, and I don't know whether this is in part to that culture of NFT culture, or the quick wanting to learn these things quickly, where I don't think people understand, especially me as a beginner or coming into this as well, just how many different pieces of software knowledge you need to go from start to finish. And I don't know if you're with being able to share a little bit of this?
Oh no, I can share everything. I'm an open book when it comes to this. So the thing is, you don't actually need all that software I'm using. So I don't know if I'm known for that, but I kind of use a lot of softwares. Like I have a software for cloth, I have a software for UVs, I have a software for painting on objects, right? And so you could essentially do that all with one software. The thing is, I have the belief that if you have a company and they do only one thing, they probably do it better than a software company that does all of the things at the same
Right.
time. So if you have like C4D UV tools are probably good enough for most part, but when I mean I can afford like using RISM, for example, that's the software I use, RISM UV, and that's a company that specializes in that one thing, right? You can't do anything else with that software. You can just do UVs, like unwrap 3D models so you can paint on them later or whatever. And it's probably better than what C4D has to offer, because C4D does cloth,
Fire.
pyro, everything. It's just like it's a 3D DCC, digital content creation tool, right? That's what they do everything. They have to do everything,
Yes.
since they're one of the main players. And yeah, so I tend to go to software packages that are like specialized on one thing, and then I use that one thing, and then I bring it all together in C4D. But you don't have to. Like, for example, when I would start now with 3D without having the experience I have, I would probably just go and use Blender. Blender is free. I mean, that's like, as a student, if I had Blender back then, like Blender existed back then, but it was just considered like not really a good 3D software. Back then it was like the GIMP of 3D software. You know GIMP?
Yes,
That's
the free Photoshop.
thing.
I remember having that
Yeah,
in
yeah.
IT. It was terrible. It worked,
Yeah,
but
and it's just like it does kind of, but it's not like at the same level, right? And that was the same. That was the case for Blender back then. Now Blender is like that fully very capable 3D package that does all of the things. There's a million add-ons you can buy for it that are dirt cheap. It's so well documented. There's so many learning resources for it. It's incredibly powerful, and it's free. It's completely free, 100% free. I can just go download it now. No money paid and everything. And if I am a 15-year-old right now who wants to learn 3D, of course I go buy fucking Blender.
Yeah.
Not buy it. Download it. That's no
No-brainer,
right?
absolutely.
So yeah, and Blender does all the stuff. It does UVs, it does everything, and I don't need to pay all that money. But if I want to like if I need that extra 10%, or I'm willing to pay for these extra 10-15% of performance of options, then maybe RISM is a good answer, or Marvelous Designer, or Houdini. I don't know, so it's always, and also it's just helpful to know more than one software package.
Yes.
So yeah,
and I it's something that it seems to be the most common comment that people ask you, but it's so great to actually hear that you don't need them all. Just keep doing you, keep having fun. If you can enjoy it, that's great. If you don't even have Cinema 4D, you can get Blender. On the other side of this is Unreal, which I think is something that started to come through. And I wanted to ask if you've had a play with it.
Yeah, I used it professionally for a few projects with the company I was last with. And personally, I'm not a fan of using it in the context of like the stuff that is usually rendered within offline render engine like Octane, Redshift, Corona or something, right? So we used it for something, I don't know, do you know virtual production?
No. Is that
You have
the
like
screen at the
the
background?
Mandalorian thing.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly that. And we did it like with that. Like we did a BMW car show, like very big, and all the artists didn't really know how to use Unreal. We learned it for that project, and it was just a big hassle, in my opinion. It wasn't like, from my perspective, wasn't that much. It was interesting, yes, but I always felt like, okay, so we have to do all of that and figure out how to, like, because it's made, we didn't use Unreal Engine 5, we used Unreal Engine 4, and even though it's like a few years back now, but still back then was just like, it felt very clumsy, and you could really tell it was more like meant for games, right? So you had all these things you have to take care of before it is actually running in real time. And everyone was like, it was sold to us, not from the Epic Games guys, like, but it was like the people who decided that we're gonna use that now for that project were like, yeah, but it's all real time. We don't have to wait for renderings. And like after 15 minutes of playing with it, I press a button to render shadow maps, which takes 3 times as long as doing it with Octane, and I'm just sitting there thinking, yeah, okay, real time, right? And then there's like all these, like, I don't know, there was like a million things you have to optimize. Like there's like some assets in the distance that get weird blotchy shadows at some point for some reason, and I always thought, okay, like halfway through the project that took months, I was like, okay, it would have been way faster just rendering that. So the only selling point really was that there's like, that my boss could go to the BMW boss and tell him, look, see that flower pot here on the big screen? We can move it in real time. And then he moved it and was like, ah. But I thought, hey, let's just fucking render that thing with Octane. It looks perfectly beautiful. And yeah, that but I think it's it's a game engine, right? It's made for games,
Yes.
and I think it's incredibly powerful. Don't get me wrong, Unreal is a great software, but I have problems using it for stuff that's where it's not really meant for yet.
Yes.
Or it feels like it's not meant for that. And yeah. So my experience is a little bit biased in that way, that I used it for stuff it's not really made for, probably. I don't know.
Moving swiftly from your distaste for that process is what it seems to be your love of Octane, and is something.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, I really like Octane.
And I wanted to ask, I'm assuming you have tried others in the sphere of.
Yeah, but I actually I haven't used that many other engines. So
Interesting.
I have a friend, Raphael Rau. I don't know if you know him.
Yes,
He's
Silverwing. Is it?
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
Yes.
He used probably all the not all the engines, but many engines, like Maxwell, Indigo, like very niche engines that are not like really big in the scene, where you have like, oh, there's like this engine, like it's called Redshift and it has like 1 million users. It's not like that. So there's like also smaller engines that are not that widely adapted, and he also tested them, and there's like certain things these engines are strong with and certain things they are not so strong with, and yeah, he has like a great, like much experience with all of them. And I actually only used, so I did use Advanced Renderer 2.0, which was the standard engine in C4D way back in the day, before we had the physical renderer. When the physical came out, I switched to V-Ray.
Okay.
I used V-Ray for many years, and after that I used Octane. So I come from V-Ray and then directly to Octane,
And you've
and
never
now I'm
looked
using
back.
Octane. No, yeah. So the experience I had, like V-Ray back then, wasn't the V-Ray people had when they used 3ds Max or Maya or anything. It was a different V-Ray. So there was, for many years, there was no V-Ray for C4D. That was made from Chaos Group, which was the company who makes V-Ray, or is still the company who makes V-Ray. And I don't know how the deals were there in the background, but essentially there was like this Austrian company, and they did V-Ray for C4D, and every other app like Max, Maya, and what else, they also all had V-Ray made from Chaos Group, with like the original guys, right? Yeah, and we had like the weird version of V-Ray coming from Austria, and that was super wonky, full of memory leaks and bugs, and we had like super strange limitations. Like, for example, if you wanted to use displacement, the object that had the displacement had to be on the top of the object manager, and otherwise it wouldn't work. For example, and it was just like super wonky. Everything was super wonky, and but it was fast and could do things no other engine could do, and it looked amazing. So, like, Haze, the dirty kitchen, I did that with V-Ray.
I didn't know that. I thought most of your
Yeah.
work was Octane.
No.
So
There's like half of it is V-Ray, actually. Like, the older ones are mostly V-Ray. And V-Ray was engine that could do many things. It was like it's a ray tracer, a biased ray tracer. That means you work with interpolations, and like you have GI, and Octane is a path tracer that is a spectral path tracer. That's a different approach to rendering. And V-Ray was very flexible. That had a ton of options to find. It was like kind of like Redshift,
Okay.
but Redshift is on GPU and V-Ray was CPU back then. These days, V-Ray can also do GPU, but back then there was like a ton of. It was the learning curve for V-Ray back then was different from Octane. That's also a reason why like switching to Octane was such an great experience for me, because like back then I read pages and pages of like articles about how DMC samplers work, and there's like how you can fine tune light caches and pre-cache irradiance maps and on all that shit, and then you can use every second frame for an animation and pre-bake the caches for that before you render that, and it's just incredibly complicated stuff back then for my teenager brain. And and then there was like that thing, you can also use brute force, but it renders super slow, and that's like the path tracer experience. It's just all grainy, and it then resolves itself. And that was the stuff when you wanted to use path tracers back then. It's just super slow. And then Octane, I think that was like a New Zealand company, and before Jules Urber bought it for an Otoy got it, that was just a different company. And Raphael used that for a few years, like when it was in beta even. Like the first version, like the first license he bought for Octane was like $80. It was like super cheap. And he was like a super early user for Octane. And was always talking about Octane. Yeah, Octane, fun stuff. GPU and shit, right? And it was like super limited in its feature set and everything. And then I actually used that while I was using V-Ray. We tried it for a project at the company I was working in back then. It was just the problem was the cards, the GPUs didn't have enough VRAM. I put in like 3 different tree models, and it was full. It's just like, okay, now that's 3 gigs of VRAM is gone. I'm sorry. And the boss was like, I hated him. And he was like, no, we said we're gonna use Octane for this one. I'm like, yeah, but physics disagree. I mean, I can't, I'm not a wizard, right? I can't just magically double the VRAM. And then I continued using V-Ray. And then at some point, I think after I did the project for NASA, I did one like project for NASA in 2015, I think. And I bought a new PC with a graphics card that could actually use Octane. And Raphael gave me like a crash course, like a 3 hours crash course. Like, here, that's where you find this and this and this, and that's the button you have to press. And it was just then I knew Octane. That was it. You don't have to go into the materials and set some samples. You don't have to go into light set samples. You don't have to take your care about anti-aliasing or anything. It's a path tracer. It's nothing like that. Just hit render and you wait. That's it. It's unbiased, sort of. And I was like, wow, and it looks so great. I spent like a week with like having a sphere with SSS and moving the sun around it and be like, whoa. It's just,
I'm glad you've done that
also
too.
Having,
Like...
yeah, and also having the IPR. That was the first time I had an IPR, like that preview window. Like, you press that Octane logo button and it just gives you an instant preview. When I used V-Ray, the first thing it was like 2 minutes of nothing, and then you saw a light cache building, which was like a super grainy version of the image in buckets, and then there was irradiance cache building that was just a clay of the whole scene, like not with text, just clay with like small dots on the surface, and wherever there was detail or ambient occlusion or something, there was like more dots. And that was it. And then you watched that for 4 minutes, and then it would slowly create buckets that would render the actual image. So you had to wait minutes before you could actually see what you were doing. And Octane was just pressing the button, you see it instantly. Like, what the fuck is going on? It's just mind-blowing.
How much did that change your workflow?
That was such an immense boost of quality, because like art directing stuff with an IPR that gives you that feedback so fast meant that I could just do more iterations in the same time. And it was just like, and even like that Octane to this day there's like just one downside to it, and that's VRAM. Like, I have 128 gigs of RAM in my PC. Imagine filling that with that speed Octane gives you. Like, having a GPU with that RAM, you could throw 8K maps like there's no tomorrow on it. Be like,
just give me all of them.
Yeah, but I can't do that now. I'm limited to 24 gigs with a 3040 series card, right? Or I go down the road and buy Quadro cards, which obviously is quite expensive.
Yes, you're going to laugh at me because my learning journey has been on a Mac, and I have been stuck with an M1 machine for running Octane. And I think this is where there's a nice intersection here, because you posted a video on RNDR very recently, and I've been playing with this because it's the only way I can physically see me being able to render anything bigger than what I can do on my machine. And it's now getting to a point where it's a very exciting time for someone like me who's getting into this to know that I don't actually have to render from this machine anymore. Potentially.
No.
If it's just, but it's just what you were saying in terms of there are limits and what you can and can't do, because an M1 chip.
Yeah, it's that I thought the M1 Max, because it's an SoC, right? Didn't they have like 90 gigs of VRAM or RAM, or I don't know?
Yeah.
Can't you actually access that with Octane?
Yeah.
Isn't that like, Jesus fucking Christ? But it's slow, right? Or is it fast?
It's fast. I mean, it's fast for a laptop, a thing that I can take anywhere. I think the studio machines I haven't tried out yet. But it's the
I
fact.
think like, yeah, I think like right now the Mac Pro, the cheese grate, I think they update that at some point. They
They
have to,
have
because
to.
that's still running on Intel.
Yes,
So you
and
can,
I think
yeah,
that's where I'm looking for, because the issue when they went into M1s, because before they had this machine, you could plug in an eGPU and
yeah,
you could boost your laptop to whatever it is that you wanted to try and do. And then
yeah,
now I was getting to a point where I just thought, okay, I can just build my scene on here, use it for look development, and it is incredibly fast. It is very good for at least doing look development things. Now that the plugin's a bit
yeah,
more stable and we're getting there with it kind
yeah,
of being a bit more cross compatible. But now we have, well, I think it's been out for a while, but now we have RNDR and the ORBX files, which are
yeah.
things that we might not even have to think about doing offline
Yeah,
rendering.
I mean, it has like the You Touch You Buy project. Like it was impossible to render without RNDR. Like, I mean, I
Seriously?
would, yeah, like I just like I obviously you can render it, but I just don't have enough hardware for that. I have two PCs with two 3090s. I could obviously upgrade them by two more PCs, but even then I would need to render 4 days. And RNDR was just really, it was just godsend for that. And they offered, like, they sponsored it as well. So I had like the best case scenario. I had all the guys who worked there in a Discord chat. It was like 5 people who do RNDR all
Is
day,
it
pretty much.
Paddy and or is it
Paddy,
yeah
Dino,
Dino, yep,
yeah,
yep, yep, yep.
everyone was in the chat. And when I had like questions like, how do I do that? Do I have to cache that? That frame looks weird. And they were like, yeah, that's. They explained it to me and gave me like support, first level support in real time, and they gave me some Redder credits with like the only thing they wanted me to do is they can use the video that I like. There was no like really, yeah, you have to do that tutorial later on. It was just that they didn't force me to do anything.
Sure.
They just want my honest opinion on it, like, because they want to improve the service, and they wanted to they use the video for marketing stuff if they like be able to do that. And I was like, yeah, sure. This is, thanks. And yeah, it was just a godsend because it was not possible to render that locally with my PCs here, and they are fast PCs. I have like it's faster than a laptop or anything.
I wanted to touch
Nice.
on You Touch You Buy, because
Mm-hmm.
one, it's from a detail perspective, the time and attention that you put into this. But I wanted to ask before we actually get into the nitty gritty with it, is what
Yeah.
was it like live streaming the entire process?
Oh, it's was very strange in the sense that so many people. I act like when I started, like this really started like a spontaneous thing, right? So there was, oh, there you're back, by the way.
Perfect.
There was like someone on Twitter, I think, asking if I can live stream that. I was like, yeah, sure. And then I figured out how to use my photo cam. Like, I have a Sony A7 IV, how to hook that up as a webcam. I have
Oh,
the
nice. Yeah,
microphone,
yeah, yeah.
and then I like played around with OBS for 3 days, and that's that, right? And it was just like super fast streaming setup that actually looks great. And then I streamed for one day, like 6 hours without a pause, and was just like super exhausted. But there were like 50, 60, 70 people in this live stream. It was just wow. So many people came to ask questions all the time. They helped me, actually. Like, they were like, yeah, if that doesn't work, you can do that. And I learned so much from them, and they were all super kind. I never had like any like bad experience with them. They were all like super open, nice people from all around the world. We had like people from Morocco, from Iran, from Ukraine. Even when there was like crisis and there were like
Wow.
people writing in the chat, hey, we have, that's like the right now we have power, and me and my friends are watching you now, and they were like in the Ukraine while they are at war with Russia, and it's just like super humbling and nice. And it felt like I was faster because I didn't have too much distraction. Usually when I work just for myself, I just sit here and then there's like a movie running on the secondary screen or a YouTube video or something, and I get up more and walk around or browse the internet, and I can't do that when I'm live streaming. I have to talk the whole time and be like, okay, now I'm doing this, and I have like to some level of entertainer going on, right?
Absolutely.
So people want to have like a conversation with me, and they ask questions all the time, so I can't just sit there and watch a YouTube video while 50 people are watching. It's probably not good, right? And like having 6 hours, like 4 days a week, roughly 4 or 5 days a week, and 6 hours of work done every day is actually quite fast for me, at least. Because usually when I work alone, it's 12 hours, but it's with a lot of breaks in between. So probably maybe like 4 hours of actual work, and then spread over 12 hours for the day, and then 7 days a week. So I don't, maybe one day break, and then I work the whole time, but with a ton of breaks in between.
Yes.
And like, so I don't know how that Pyrosim works. So let's watch that 3 hour movie now, and then afterwards figure it out.
We'll see what it looks like. I wanted
Yeah.
to know, because it's such a time investment, how do you prepare, or do you just throw yourself into it and just see where you end up?
So I go through the creation process in my head a lot. So like also from a technical standpoint, there's like the fear of starting a project and then abandoning it because I didn't think through it enough is like too big that I can just start with it. Because when it takes so much time, and then I am in the project, and after 2 months I figure out, well, that doesn't work out the way I thought it would, and that's a problem because then you wasted 2 months. And like when I'm in it for 2 months, that it would be very soul crushing if I just abandon it and throw it away, because I think, hey, that's one side of the coin I didn't think of when I planned that whole thing. So there's like at least some of the elements that are a big question mark in terms of creating them have to be kind of solved, or there has to be some level of R&D before I do them.
Interesting.
So right now, for example, I'm like no, wait, let's start there. So before I did the Corner Store project, I actually did a Corner Store. I started with a different scene, and then I abandoned it after almost a month, and because it just didn't work out the way I planned it to. Because it's just like, it's a different Corner Store, and maybe I can show it actually. Wait. So that's the old one. That the new one doesn't look that way. We had like 2 aisles here, and everything was just wider and bigger. But it never, like, I did that and was like, okay, that's just too big. There's no corners that looks like a theater stage. It's just a big stage, a big room. No Corner Store would look like that. It has to be narrower, and it's just like too ginormous in a way, and I don't have the resources to fill all that up. And yeah, just also then I thought of this umbrella thing, and it didn't work out the way I wanted. And also I didn't block it out really thoroughly.
Interesting.
And the block out process is very like, or did I? Wait. Yeah, that was the block out. But it's not enough block out. I just was like, yeah, that's gonna work. It's enough. But it's actually not enough. There's so many question marks still in the, like, where does the character go? Like, you pretty much have to nail the whole image in the block out in a way. And without that, it's not gonna work. And then at that stage I abandoned it here. And then I started the actual one like a few months after that.
Okay,
I think.
and I guess you would.
Yeah.
Were you able to reuse any of these assets, or
Yeah,
yes?
the fridge is the same. Like it was already unwrapped and everything, and also this one here, but only like the shelf here, only the front side. So it was like double sided, so it has a back side. So it's on, like, there's items on both sides because it's a middle aisle.
Yes.
And in the final corner store version, there's just one side, so I cut it in half pretty much. And yeah, like that whole that counter here that I never used, sadly. And I used the texture for the wall and the ceiling, but I didn't make that myself. I just used that. And yeah,
And I guess, like, because even here is like the amount of detail that's gone into every single thing already, and it's
but that's the point. I started too early with that. So the workflow that helps is if you go from very rough to very detailed, and if you go to very detailed right at the beginning, it messes things up because you are not able to make quick changes or moves.
interesting.
So because the block out will change. So you plan a scene with cubes and spheres, and it's just like really rough, like really broad strokes. And if you start to slowly get in more detail and then replace one cube at a time with a detailed object. But if you go with too much detail, you can't like really move it around that much anymore. And then you have like whole complicated setups that you can't really change anymore. And yeah, that makes it more complicated.
And
So, and in here in that stage, it's just like too much going on at this early stage already. It feels like, and the whole scene, the idea behind the scene, it's just too big. It never was supposed to work like that.
and it's amazing that you, I guess, were able to make that snap judgment call of, okay, this isn't going to work. Let's go again. Let's start.
Yeah,
And did you
but
start with
because
this scene? Was this the very first thing that you started with, as opposed to, the outdoor scenes, which were before you got into the actual corner store itself?
what do you mean with that scene?
With You Touch You By, with the the intro sequence before it.
Yeah,
comes...
that's the scene from 2017, right? And there's a tutorial around that, so I recorded the process behind that and made like a tutorial that I sold for a while, and then now it's on YouTube for free. And I explain how I create such a scene. And since I streamed the You Touch You Buy process, I thought first, okay, it's gonna be funny when this is actually like the intro to it, like, because that's the first tutorial. Now I made another one just in a different format, and it's a live stream, and we start with that like as the introduction. But it's also kind of cool because we have Bob, like the robot here. That's where he originates from, right? And that's also this passage here. You go through there and end up in the corner store. So he's just like going to the back door, robbing the astronaut or whatever. And so that's just like connecting two pieces to tell a story in a way.
Brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. It's also rendered in Aces and everything, so it's
now
different.
I would love to hear your thoughts on Aces, because I did put out a video.
Oh, I love it.
Aha! Okay, we have a fan.
Yeah. Yes. It's like you don't have highlights that burn out anymore and everything. So it's just like, it's almost like you have a different BSDF fall off in a way. It's just like, yeah.
And so this was this
It
your
feels more.
first project?
No, that's not the first one.
Okay.
I think I did like a bunch of smaller projects. Wait, can we actually? No. Like I did like smaller projects before that with Aces. It's not the first one. I think everything that came after 2003. Do you know 2003? That LAN party.
Yes. With all the
that was the last.
computers.
Yeah, that was the last linear workflow sRGB kind of like technically I still use sRGB, but yeah, the just in a linear fashion that I use in OpenEXR with linear workflow.
Yeah.
And after that I used Aces exclusively. And it's just like when you set up a scene, you really don't notice Aces that much. You just notice it when you stop using it and switch to linear sRGB.
And you go, whoa.
And suddenly it's like, oh, okay, that looks odd now. And then because you still work the same way in a way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that means you set up colors the same way and everything, and you just figure out that suddenly light, for example, like if you have like really bright light on a surface, that it behaves differently. And that you have like way more play in terms of colors and what you can do with them in certain situations. And I don't know, it just feels, I don't know, it feels cool and good. And also it feels good knowing that you're like using a state-of-the-art color science thing.
Absolutely, because it's honestly one of the most requested questions that I had. And so I ended up trying to, and that's where I ended up speaking to Dino, just to really get into the nitty gritty of really trying to understand, just trying to explain it to, as a beginner, because you've got people that are saying, don't use it. And then you've got Aces coming into Octane. And it was one of those things.
It's not like it's not gonna make everything look super amazing. Obviously you need to be able to create a good image, and I can still create a good image without Aces. Mm-hmm. It's just like a little bit extra special sauce.
Yeah, and
I
think Dino had a great point where, as you were saying, the extra light, the fact that you can push exposure a tiny bit more, you have a bit more forgiveness in the highlights. That's where it can start changing things, because you can push things in a certain degree further than you naturally would have. I think that's potentially where I got up to with my research with it.
I think I actually saw a piece Dino made where with a car light, like you had the light on the glass in front of a reflector on a car.
Yes.
And the highlights you get in the refraction and everything, that looks so much more vibrant, and you can push that so much more in terms of like contrast and color play and everything, and compared to linear, because it's just like just pure sRGB. It's there's just more stuff going on there, more information.
And I think there was one question I had here, which was more a case of coming into these things, or coming into learning 3D. It's such a split between a technical understanding and an artistic understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you manage those two elements?
Oh, I think I'm just like, I always found that technical stuff super interesting, but I'm not like I have no understanding of electronics, for example. Like I can build a PC and everything, that's fine, but if you give me like a PCB and
a soldering iron,
then I have to fix it on the soldering iron, I'm just completely useless. So I don't know how resistors and capacitors and how you can chain them and everything. It's just like, I don't know, I'm probably gonna blow it up. And I just find like and I was always too stupid for programming in a way. I had many attempts of learning it and was always like, I'm a bad and slow learner, it feels like there's people who sit down, they have like a thing, like watch a video tutorial on it, and then they know it and use it in a project, and it just works. For me, that is a year-long process. It takes years until I adopt something to a level that I am like really good at it. And I don't know why. Maybe I have ADHD or something. But it's and I don't know. I always found that the technical side of 3D is super interesting. There's like so many. Like, first of all, it's cool to make cool looking images. That's the main thing. And then there's like 3D is super technical. Back in the day, I was like, yeah, but I gonna be a painter and I just gonna paint everything. And then I found out painting is super boring because it's just having a pen and then painting. It's like in the 3D, I can modeling, lighting, I can simulation, I can blow stuff up, I can. I know there's dynamics, a million things that are completely different. I can build a character, I can do cloth simulation, I can do underwater shit. There's so much variety in it. So if one thing gets boring, I can just do another thing.
Absolutely.
And I'm like really, there's like sometimes you just don't want to do SDS modeling. After 3 weeks, you want to throw your PC out of the window because it's just like, yeah, it's always the same. It's boring and it's slow, and you solve errors all the time, and then you forget to set your knife to visible only, and then you cut through the whole object, and you have spent half of the day to fix these cuts, and it's just like and sometime but then you can do another thing. Then you can do, I don't know, something with cloners, some MoGraph shit, like a text animation.
Yes.
Never did that. Let's watch a tutorial. There's like
interesting.
Yeah, and it's like 3D is it feels like painting. I mean, I have the utmost respect for everyone who can paint and does that, and it's incredible. But for me personally, it's just like, okay, you have that brush in your hand, you have the canvas. That's just feels like the purest form of creation. When you strip everything away, that's the least amount of resources you need to have, like a medium you can draw on and something to draw with, and that's it. Right, and then obviously there's so much nerd shit about drawing hands, for example, or bodies and perspective, and there's like so many things you can go into, but it all breaks down to having your hand, a pen, and a piece of paper. And okay, you can say the same thing for 3D. You have always your 3D software, but it feels just more that there's more variety to it, and you can just geek out a little bit more. There's not that much muscle memory involved. You have your hand, your mouse. You don't really have to have like a muscle memory in order to draw hands or something. It's just like basic stuff, and you just tell the software what to do, and I don't know, it feels easier.
Absolutely. I feel like going through this, the one thing that I knew I had experience with was cameras. That was the thing, because that's what I loved. I love taking photos. I love going through and doing these things. And then you get into 3D software, and I'm like, oh, there's a camera. Awesome. But
it's amazing that you have the most perfect camera.
Yes.
Like, it's just like the God camera. It's just like you can have every lens you can imagine. You can have it. You can have a 900 millimeter lens with f1.8, something like stupid. Nobody has. It's physically impossible to build.
Basically, like holding,
and you can have it.
It's like,
it's as big as a GoPro or stuff like like you can put it everywhere. You can put it in a mug, or in a suitcase or something. Like stupid, right? And it's. No grain or anything, no noise, ISO 1 billion, exactly. But it doesn't matter. It's so amazing.
And that's what blew me away. I was like, you could just change the focal length at any time. And, I thought, I don't need to change anything. Awesome. And it's brilliant. And I was going to say, what things like this, or are there other skills outside of, say, photography and things that you've been able to bring in to your process that you think that these outside skills would
I'm
help?
actually not a good photographer.
Surely. your work
I'm
composition.
Yeah, but I have a camera, right? So after the NFT thing, my dog is scratching at the door. So after the NFT thing, I bought like the Sony a7 IV, and I bought like a 70-200 f2.8 Sony lens that just came out, G Master, expensive as fuck, cost like $3,000, and I am the shitty photographer, and it's so much fun. I love that lens. That's my favorite lens. I have only two really good lenses. One is a 24-70 f2.8 from Sigma, a Sigma art lens, and one 70-200. So I have everything from 24
all the
to
way
200 and 2.8. Yeah, and they are both amazing. But the 70-200, I love that so much. It's just like,
it's a great walk around focal length. No, that's brilliant.
yeah, and
it's brilliant.
Like you think, hey, it's a telephoto. It's just it's probably for sports photographers, but no, it's not. It's also for portraits, and you can do landscapes with it. Even you can do everything.
Exactly. When I'm walking around London, it is possibly my favorite street photography.
Yeah.
Just because of how cramped you can get. You can get so tight,
and you can be far away.
Exactly.
Like if you have like a wide open lens, you have to go near the subject, and then people are getting weird and be like, "Why are you taking pictures of me?" And if you have a 200mm lens, you can be like far away, and they're like, "Bye."
Leave me alone. Yeah. I use the Panasonic GH6. That's the film.
Oh yeah, that's great for filming,
yes,
right?
For the
yeah.
vlog profile that you get out of this camera is nuts. But the one thing I like about the Micro Four Thirds sensors is the fact that when you put on a 50mm, it's got a 2:1 crop ratio, so it actually ends up being a 30. And so when you stick a 100mm lens on there, it's a 200. You get a 200, it's a 400mm lens. So you could just keep exponentially going up and shooting an open gate. It's fantastic. But I'm surprised you don't actually have a prime lens, because I thought you might be just like I'm going to get the composition in, I'm going to try and do these things. Or do you just love having that flexibility?
Yeah, I think like, so the thing I actually don't like about my camera setup is that it's so heavy. Like it's I mean, it's a big ass Sony camera and a big ass lens. It's a couple of kilos you carry with you. I think 2 kilos or something, right? But it's just, if you walk all day and be on the road all day, it's a little bit much. And then you bring it out. It's like a small, like, it's easier to just take pictures with your phone.
Exactly.
But then I want the quality. I want the real lenses, not in like the real DOF and no interpolation. I want the bokeh and everything, and so it's like the I need to convince myself before I bring it with me, because then I need the strap, I need the bag with the batteries and everything. And if I walk around in like I have only two lenses, and I have a really small bag that I can put in my backpack. But even when I bring both lenses and the camera and 2 batteries, it's already pretty heavy to walk around with every day.
Yes.
Like all day. I was in Amsterdam and I had both of it with me on my back and was just like, oh God. I wish I had a Leica.
just get me a rangefinder camera. That's all I need.
But the thing is, just that one thing. I would miss that if I had a Leica. I would miss that. also, because like a Leica is, you don't have a 200mm lens on a Leica.
You've got
And it's also fucking expensive.
yeah,
It's so expensive.
you've got a
Oh god.
fixed the fixed 35mm that you get on them.
Yeah, that costs like 10K or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just
They're great, but you can, for me, it's more I don't feel comfortable ever going outside with something that expensive. You know, like that. That turns you into a walking target wherever you go if you're just trying to take photos. And you can get the one thing that I've been super impressed with is the color science of Panasonic's. You know, that is something that has changed.
Yeah.
It's changed so much. And if you're actually because I did the exact same thing. I got so annoyed at how heavy cameras were. I actually ended up getting a little Canon M50. You know, the one that people use for vlogging, like all the time. It's like a tiny little vlogging camera. It comes with a little M lens. It is as small as that you can fit in your jacket pocket. And the photos that come out of that were phenomenal. The raw kit
is it APS-C, right?
APS-C, tiny little sensor.
Yeah.
It's got a tiny bit of image stabilization in there if you are shaking about, but it's just more bang for buck for a tiny little camera. It did so well. It was by absolute run and gun, and actually made me want to take more photos because it wasn't so heavy. And it's one of the.
I mean, there's like a lot of people who rather buy an APS-C Fuji X100 something. I don't know their lineup, but that use that rather than a full frame camera because it's just easier to carry around with you. And the lenses are not that heavy. There's not so much glass in them. You have like these tiny, like the APS-C lenses for Sony cameras for the A6000 series or whatever. They are so light. That's just there's not so much glass in there. And if you have like the Sigma art lens here, that is 1 kilo almost. It's just one lens.
What was where is it? This is what is this? This is a 15-25 that goes on the, and this is a beast this is a micro 4/3 lens, and it's almost as big as my face. It's supposed to be a tiny camera. Yeah. It's supposed to be small.
Yeah.
And, I feel like everything's just going up and getting bigger, and I'm glad I'm able.
Are you mainly using primes?
Usually
are you mainly using? Okay.
Yeah, I prefer the speed of having even just that split second. Yeah. For me, it's like before picking up the camera, it was a lot of trying to make as many decisions before taking the shot as you can, and the zoom ended up being a distraction for me very, very early on. And the photographs that I like to take are also a bit more environmental portraits. It's like if it's me and my girlfriend and we're just going for a walk somewhere, I want to capture not just her, but where are we? What street are we on? Where are we going? And I think that's where I started to just realize I only need essentially a 35mm or something that sort of equivalent, and then just training my eye to that. Yeah. And if I need to get closer, get closer. The only thing that
closer, go farther away.
Yeah, and really start to move yourself about. And is what I really liked about that is it made me explore a lot more when we go out on walks, because I take a photo and go, oh, I really wonder what that's like from over there. Now I need to walk over there. Yeah. So then I start checking, and you get to that bit, and you go,
it's also healthy. You walk.
Yeah, exactly. It's a fun way. It's a fun way to keep fit. But then I think there was also at least with the primes, you can get so much more light in. They're usually much higher f-stop.
Yeah.
For a lot of these things, so at least being able to bring them in from that point, it changed. Sometimes I'm like, hey, I'll just bring a zoom out. When I went to Amalfi, we did take a zoom lens out because that was it. We were on a boat for half the time, and I'm shaking around everywhere. And I'm like, I want to try and get as close in as possible. I want to zoom in, but for most of the I think I've got some on my web. Well, I think it's on my website actually of sort of that trip. But again, just trying to take a small, compact system as possible does end up making you feel like you can go out and take
the light thing. I solve with just like don't giving any shit about the noise or grain I have in my pictures, because I figured out I would just crank the ISO up I would just give it like auto ISO, and sometimes it's at 10K, but it's just because it's 33 megapixels and it's full frame, and it just looks cool with like a lot of grain in it. I don't know, it has a character to it, like, yeah, okay, whatever. I put it, to be honest, most of the time I leave the aperture at f2.8 and just leave it there for everything. It's just never change it. It's just auto ISO,
so
auto shutter speed, just just the aperture at 2.8 and then just shoot everything. That's what I do.
I can't wait to see all of your new photos. This newfound passion that you're going to take to taking your camera to as many different areas. So one thing I wanted to ask is, like, a lot of the scenes that you've made, you're obviously you love to build absolutely everything. Is that correct? Would you build?
No, that's like, that's that people like. That's a headline you can sell very good. I think that's like some journalist, or some, not journalists, but like some people running some websites where they put like articles about me or did a feature with me. They use that to sell these articles, and it just like became a story over the years that I do build everything myself, but it's not true. So first of all the textures I use probably are not self-made. Some of them are, but not all of them. I would say 90% of them are from some packs I buy.
Sure.
Right? The assets I use, like, I would say 90% of the assets I use are actually self-made. But I also don't shy away of buying assets. It's just like a lot of these assets I do myself, but I have nothing against it when people buy their assets. It's just like quality control for me. So it's just one way to get exactly what I want and how I want it, and it's just easier that way. Like, sometimes I need assets to fit in a very specific place, and then if I buy them and the mesh is shitty and the UVs don't work, or like if I do everything myself, I can control these points better. And it's also fun of building these things, and it's a good practice and everything. So I also don't use, like, I never buy like materials. There's like packs where you can just buy materials. Never do that.
Okay.
I always build these materials, like these setups, myself, and I never reuse them. So if I always build them new
every time,
there's not a good,
wow.
Like, not in the same scene, right?
Sure.
So I have a metal material that is super complicated, then I just copy that and use it for the different thing. But like, I don't have like a material library. So I use textures. They reuse them all the time. But like, if I have a plastic material, so if I start a new project today and I create a plastic material, I would build it from scratch. I wouldn't go to a different scene and copy that. It's just like, I don't know. It's not. But a plastic material is also not super complicated. It's just like 5-6 minutes of work, probably. And then, I mean, it's
I because that is something that I've kind of focused where my learning is going to next in terms of shaders and lighting. Is my next sort of area of the study, and I'd love to know, because when you're approaching to create a new material, how do you break that object down, knowing what nodes you need to use at what time?
Nodes, well, you have, like, an object has a diffuse amount if it's dielectric. So dielectric meaning that it doesn't transport electricity, so metal or water. Water is different because it's water, but metals usually are conductive materials, so they have a different physicality. That means they don't have a diffuse amount, for example, but everything else means there's a diffuse amount, which is the color. That's in the case of plastic, some RGB spectrum, for example. And then for everything else, like wood, for example, there you have like wood texture. So that goes into diffuse. That's always the same, color or texture. Then you have a reflection. That reflection is controlled. So there's like these rules, right? So the reflection is controlled not with specularity. So you don't touch the specular slider or anything. You just use the IOR. You can move between 1.4 and 5. That's that. Everything outside of that is unrealistic. So you're limited to these and just move between or 1.3 and 1.5, somewhere in that area.
Okay.
And then you have roughness. You can do all kinds of things with that roughness. You can mix all these. So I have like a library of roughness maps I use. You can mix them. You can make it more shiny. You can use fall offs. And then you have the bump channel where you do like scratches, micro scratches, and you have the normal channel where you also do scratches. You can combine them. And that's that. And then there's SSS.
Yes.
That's also like if you have plastic, and so it doesn't have to be realistic, because SSS just looks amazing and I really love to use that. So you have plastic and you can say, okay, I use a dirt node to blend between an SSS material and the plastic material, or I use like some grunge node, texture to blend between them. So it's also something I do all the time. I have two materials. One is plastic and there's another plastic with completely different roughness, for example, or it's a little bit translucent and see-through, and then I blend between them and I mix them. And I have like a map that controls the amount, how it's mixed. So there's black spots in the map, then I can't see that material, and there's white spots and I can see that material, and so on. And that's all there is. And then there's like the same set of rules for metals. Metals have different rules, and yeah, but that's pretty much it. You have just like that predefined physical knowledge on how materials behave. And like there's like certain situations that call for certain techniques, but it's usually like all the Octane nodes, there's a billion nodes. It's almost like I use 10% of them. like there's like some compare nodes, and you can use them, like you can make shortcuts. Like for example, a bump, I used to control the strength of the bump with the piping in the image texture goes into a multiply node, and the multiply node has also like the second part for the multiply node is in flow texture.
Yes.
And if the flow texture would be the power slider for
because that's 0 to 1,
amount.
isn't it? Is that a 0 to 1 slider? Yes.
Yeah, and if I set it to 0, and 0 would be no bump, and 1 would be all the bump. That's how you can like build a control setup for that. Then the Dino said, well, you can save you one node if you just like, because nodes need time to calculate and everything, right? So that technically increases the render time just a tiny microseconds, or I don't know, but it adds up over time if you have like 500 different materials with all that thing. And he said, well, you can just do a color corrector node and use the brightness slider. It's the same thing. It just does exactly the same thing, but you only use one node for that. And for now I do that. So, yeah, but it's just like these tiny things, right? So there's like the set of rules, and
That's great, because I think because there are so many options in Octane, I get kind of overwhelmed very quickly, and I then start questioning, am I doing it right? Is this
but it comes with time.
Okay, that's good to know.
If you have questions, by the way, you can hit me up anytime.
Oh, man.
If you have questions about Octane.
I will be...
Just write me a DM and I will tell you everything I know.
Because I will be the first...
That goes to all the people.
It's so kind.
I'm glad to help.
No, I think there's one thing that I've loved about doing and having these conversations as well is just the actual community for 3D artists
Oh yes.
is
Yeah.
something that is a beautiful thing that I haven't seen in many other design communities for graphic design, for photography, for it's as soon as I've come into motion
But it's
design
cool,
and
right?
3D
3D
design,
artists are usually super helpful to each other. They
yeah.
just share everything.
I think it's because we don't go outside, potentially. I don't know if it's.
Yeah, and maybe it's that thing that we still see each other as like that we see ourselves as worthless artists because it's just like nobody gives a fuck about digital art, and we're like, yeah, well, just make like obviously I mind if people use my work for promoting their own stuff and be like steal my work. That I don't like that, but like if people ask me about how I did things, I tell them because why wouldn't I?
It's
And
amazing.
I don't have like trade secrets or anything. Like they will figure. It's also not like the stuff I know is not super complicated, to be honest. It's just a lot of that. It's just like the sheer amount of things I use, and it's just like a wild mix of things. But the like, if you break it down to pieces, the pieces are not that complex. It's just like it's always the same, but used in different configurations. And but that's like if you break 3D in general down into small elements, it's not that complicated. Also, like stuff like Houdini, I don't understand Houdini at all, right? So don't get me wrong, Houdini is magic for me. But if you ask a Houdini TD, and if you know the software, it's just use moving data from point A to B, and that data is usually not complex data. It's just like, well, we have 15 million points here in that position. Now we use the position and copy that to that. And it's just like copying position and move directions and stuff like that. It's just not nothing like where you have to have a physics degree for or something. Like okay, maybe it's in some cases, but like the everyday stuff that people do with Houdini, like where people lose their mind about, it's just like data, data,
To,
data. So
just data
yeah,
moving from one
and
place.
yeah, and it's like what I do is also like I put maps. I have like specific ways of like how procedural UVs I use that I throw on objects. The objects always have the same properties in a way. I scatter stuff. I use fall off. It's always the same thing. If you, I could probably teach that to you in half a year. I don't know, but it's the moment it gets complicated is when the artistic stuff gets in because that's hard to teach. Like
Yes.
then it's a question of taste and like ideas and yeah, there's like something you can't put in words. It's all a lot of about feeling and like how you interpreted feeling and how you feel stuff and how would you put that into a visual form and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
there's a process of having to fail a lot and
yeah.
knowing what it's
Oh yeah, good point.
that's something that
Like
I've
failing.
just hard and showing something
Yes,
to a friend and going, this looks terrible, whether it be a photograph or
good
any.
though. Failing is good. No, really, it's the best thing that can happen. Like failing. There's a talk from Adam Savage that's on YouTube. It's called Failure or something. And Adam Savage, it's the guy from
Yeah.
Mythbusters. You probably know him. Yeah, yeah. And he's like at DEF CON 2007, I don't know, 17, like way back. And he's talking about failure and how he failed in his career, how many times he failed and how bad he failed and how important it is to fail and how failure builds trust and creates a base for and how yeah and for everything and how much it teaches you like because failure shapes the way you approach art, how your stuff looks. Like if everything you do is a success, that wouldn't work, because you need to know, like, it's like failure is like the contrast point to the white spots on a map, and if you don't fail, that map would lead you anyway.
Exactly.
It's just like, it's a blank. That there, you need the contrast, you need the good and the bad. It doesn't work without it. It's just like, it's necessary to fail in our field, in our artistic endeavors. I need to suck for a while until I can appreciate the good stuff. It also builds taste. Like, how do I know what is good if I don't fail at stuff? Like, I think sometimes can be very objective what is good and what is bad. Like, there's like objectively, like, you can dislike a style and everything, but there's like objectively good images.
Yes.
It's just the fact.
Yes.
There's like stuff. Oh, sorry, I just spat on my. There's just like stuff that is objectively beautiful and well made. Like, everyone can agree on that, and then it's important to know that, and the way you know that is to fail, because then you know, oh, that's hard to make. And it's not like art has to be difficult to make, but like, that's a part of it.
Yeah.
I think like part of the creation is also how it's made, in a way, always.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
The process of putting that image together.
Yes, the process, like, there's like, I think that's the balance. Like, the Ash Thorpe, like, he had like that that conversation with himself, like the episode of the Collective podcast where he talked about AI. I think that was the second episode, and it was just him talking about it, and it was like, that AI stuff takes away the process pawn of art, because then it's just like a prompt, that the process is gone. There's no process anymore. And I think that the process is like, if you put too much focus on the process, it becomes this process pawn, and it's just like, I mean, I can build a cube in a most complicated way, but in the end it will still be just a cube, right? And it's like, like, you can do like a basic cube primitive in Cinema 4D with like a million subdivisions, right? You could build that by hand, by replacing all the polys by hand. It would take half a year, but in the end you would still just have a cube, and that's stupid. It's process pawn. It's just talking about, it's just the endeavor itself is, yeah, it's dumb to do it that way, and it's nothing special. But if the process pawn and the artistic and playful idea meet in the middle and shake hands, I think that's something beautiful. It never hurt if something that is super beautiful also is hard to make.
Yeah,
in a way.
I wonder whether, if we're already at a position where you've got 2D images like Mid-Journey being able to be created. You've got you've got ChatGPT, which can basically tell you how to do anything. I spent a lot of today actually trying to get ChatGPT to write a, not just to find out who you were, because I already know who you were. I just wanted to see what it thought of you. But the other thing was having it try and write an After Effects script for me, because I can't write.
Nice.
I can't write scripts. I have no knowledge of coding, but I know that ChatGPT can. So I thought, okay, let's try and see what it can do. It didn't work, but I'm getting there. I'm going to try and see if I can get it working at the moment. I've got a button working, which is better than what I thought it could. I wouldn't be able to do that beforehand. But you've got these 2D image makers. You've got text. At what point are we going to be able to transition this into 3D?
That's a good question, right? I mean, like, then, like, the whole process, I think, will be so easy at some point that it's not like really about that craftsmanships anymore. Like maybe for outsiders it will still be when you start, like imagine you have like an AI integrated into Blender, Max, Maya or C4D or anything, right? And you tell it, hey, I want a chair, and then you say, hey, now retopo that chair, make a mesh usable, now unwrap it and make the best use of all the islands, so I have the perfect amount of space and don't use UDIMs for it and everything. So if I have that AI and could just tell it whatever I want with my knowledge right now, that would make everything super easy. That's probably a cool thing that I can do that. But someone who starts out with learning 3D, I don't know, how would their experience be, right? So if you...
Because you wouldn't have the vocabulary to...
Yes, for example, or
ask those things.
Or the work steps, like, okay, and now I need UVs. Why do I need UVs?
Yes.
And if you grow up without learning these fundamentals, will that be hard for them? How then they have to learn? I don't know what they have to learn then. It's just like they like, from my perspective, that's super easy then, and it's just like, oh, that takes away all the work. And but yeah, that would be cool actually.
Well,
but from their perspective, I don't know how that would be.
Yeah. What would they be? Because I guess that the skill that everyone keeps touting, is talking about this today, of the fact that 60% of the jobs that students will be getting haven't even been created yet, is the, or school kids that are currently learning, their jobs don't exist. So the way to look at prompts is, it might be the thing that for ChatGPT or for Midjourney or for any of these things, it might actually become how they make their income in the future, which is by prompt writing at the moment is obviously in its infancy, but it will probably come to a point where it's a life skill, like being able to Google search.
It's a question if maybe it's a question if prompts are only the first step, maybe there's like something different. Like maybe there's like a mix, like you describe an object, for example, say a chair with very high back and short legs, right? And then it gives you like one chair that looks like that, and then you take that and then you have like an overpaint thing and say, okay, I want the legs longer, and then you use a combination. I don't know, there's like, how is the user interface for something like that? Is it just prompts? Prompts feel a bit like there's not enough. It leaves too much guesswork. I can't see like an industry where people just sit there and try prompts all day. I think there will be more to it, and like prompts is just like such a lazy and feels like so untacky and lame way of approaching the whole thing.
Absolutely.
I think that can be much more crazy with like, okay, I draw something and then I have that thing and it's a 3D model now, and then I can put my mouse or my finger on the leg and drag it and then like shape it with my hands even, and while I say it, like, maybe more baroque, and then it turns into baroque while you shape it at the same time, and it's just like super crazy. And you have like so many inputs. You have voice, you have brain waves, even at some point.
And you could take it from models to rooms, to environments.
And then you say, and now let's make a text, like I'm writing a book about this image right now, and like, for example, you're writing a book or a child's book and want to have illustrating, you work on the illustrations, and now describe the chair I just made, and then it transfer. That's then the prompt. You can use that again for another chair, and or like it's. Yeah,
it just keeps going.
I don't think I don't think it's just the prompts, right?
No, but on the flip side of, say, Midjourney, if you when people are trying to get good-looking things out of Midjourney, the first thing that one of the things that I always see in these little things is Octane render, and it always makes me laugh for some reason. They're always like, "Oh yeah, I want something that looks like Octane.
Yeah,
Like an Octane render. And I
yeah.
wonder, because if, you know, how do you feel as an artist having spent the time that you have to learn, to understand, to build these scenes, the months it takes you to do these things, for then someone to put in a prompt that says Octane render, and then could put your name afterwards because they like your style and they like your things, and it will produce an image that maybe looks like yours but isn't, but is obviously influenced by you.
Well, that's a good question. I had that topic on stream, and it's hard. So I think I like AI as a technology, right? Like the technology itself, like the idea behind it. I think that's a beautiful thing. I don't like companies that use the data I produced over decades to use it and profit from it. Even like, okay, there's an argument they don't really use it. They train their model. It's not copying elements. It's diffusion. Blah, blah, blah. It's a company that used my work for commercial purpose. So they used it. Doesn't matter how, they used it for commercial purpose. I don't like that. I think I have a word in that because it's the data I created and they sourced it in an unethical way. So that's the first thing. Then there's the argument of the greater good, right? So there's other artists who say, well, it's gatekeeping. Everyone should have the right to create worlds like Pandora without without having billions of dollars and being James Cameron. And I say, nobody has the right to do anything. It's just like that's like an very humanistic, very worldly view on that. It's just like there's no right, there's no God given, if like, okay, let's take away God, but there's no entity that decides who has the right to create virtual worlds or not. It's just like that's a stupid argument in my opinion. And then there's these people on Twitter that say, well, artists are super entitled and you are millionaires anyway, and it's just like stupid hot takes and bullshit, and it makes me kind of furious, and then I get like jealous at the same time. Like it's also like sometimes I think like there's like that edgelord characters like side of my character where it's like, no, fuck you, I spent the last 20 years learning that. No, you don't have the right. Go, like, you lazy bastard, take up Blender and learn it.
Yeah.
For fuck's sake.
It's free.
Right?
Go and do it.
It's free. Yeah, go sit down and practice as you do dumb shit. Right? But then it's just like, then I feel like, okay, calm down, you little bitch, like me. It's just like try not to have like an emotional view on that. And obviously it's like gonna change the world. That's the next big thing. Nobody can deny that. It's gonna change everything. Like we are at this, like I am in a point in history right now. I witnessed the birth of the internet, the birth of the personal computer, and now I witnessed that. Like 3 major shifts in everything. It's amazing, and I can't do like all these lawsuits. It's one droplet on a hot stone. It's not gonna change anything. Like maybe, like I personally hope that artists are being taken care of. Like I just have a big heart for digital artists like myself, and I want them to have a good life and that their work is valued, because I know how hard it is. I know how hard it is to work in companies and work for clients. I know how hard it is to create that stuff. firsthand, I know how hard it is. I just finished one of these big projects, and I can tell you it was very, very hard to do that. And it's very hard to learn it. It takes years to perfect it. And I know many people I know people who died over it. And yeah, I think that there's value behind that. And I don't want people to forget that. And that's my main take for that whole AI topic, because like there's like people who like that stuff, they want to streamline that stuff. Like they have an idea and the end result, like a product, for example, like a children's book or a video game, or I don't know. And the artist is just one step in the process to get there, right? So they want to streamline that. If they have an AI that can replace 5 artists and save money, hey, that's a good thing for them. But I just don't want them to forget that the base of that is an actual artist who spent years to perfect their craft, and that it's a beautiful thing that this can exist, and that people are able to do that, and that humans can achieve such high Jesus fucking Christ such high levels of fidelity and everything.
It's such a vastly changing time to be an artist, to create and to do these things. And with everything that we've discussed, what does the future look like for your work, for the things that you want to do?
Oh, good question. I talked about that with a friend today, and it's like, so I feel like that I am not there where I want to be with my art, but it's like not, it's like it's a mix of things where I think it, like the truth is in, like it's not like I'm using the wrong engine or anything. It's like a very minor adjustment of how I approach things, I feel like. And for like a good example is, there's an artist, his name is Color Sponge. I don't know if you know him.
Mm-mm.
He's collaborating with Ash Thorpe on like a lot of car projects. They're doing these car renders, and it's he also worked on Hibaro from Love, Death and Robots, that
Yes.
episode with the siren, and he was the lighting TD for that. And he's a very, very, very skilled artist, and he nailed a very specific look. I don't know if you can like call it a look, but it's just like that, like a level of fidelity when it comes to textures and lighting that is, in my opinion, that you don't see that often, that level. It just like hits the right notes. And I don't know if I can really explain that well, but it's, or if other people see it like that. Like the problem is also, I know my work the best because I look at it all the time while I create it. So it's just like a different thing. My perspective is always different from other people who see it from the outside. So, and that certain level of fidelity, it's not about poly count or like getting even more SSS bounces, or I don't know. It's just like, that's like a different thing. I don't know if it's a style thing, or it's just a texture thing, or a lighting thing, or just a combination of all of them. And I think that I need to work on that. And one way of doing that is, so when I start a project, I lock the camera, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have the block out, and then I have a camera, and I never change the camera, and I work for that. So I work for the camera. I work for the viewer, pretty much. And what I want to do next is, I will just don't lock the camera. I will just don't use any camera. I will just build the scene and have the camera everywhere where I want. So this way I will ruin the way I do breakdown shots, so I can't do the timeless how the scene builds up anymore. But it's a completely different way because I can be at every position at the same time, and I have to build the scene not like a stage for a camera, but I will build it like an actual place, like a set that you can walk. And that's a very different way of building and lighting and everything. So I will try that. That's for the next project. And like I will build a whole scene that you can walk from every angle pretty much.
Wow.
And I also don't want to use the like focus the details. Like my pictures are full of assets. There's so much fidelity in the assets I use, and I don't want I will reduce that but put the same amount in the textures. I will just drive that through textures.
Okay.
This time I will try that, and then I will hope I will get to that level. I don't know. And yeah, no, but Color Sponge is he's up there on Mount Perfection, at least from my perspective. Yeah.
Amazing. I was just thinking about if you were to, is there a way of you kind of fake setting up cameras in just locked off positions whilst you're building? So you could like auto take a photo as you're building the room or whatever scene
I mean,
that
you
is.
can
But
probably
is that-
can take the viewport and screen capture that and see how objects move and everything. It's probably possible.
But
It
unless
would be
you've got,
very slow, a lot of footage.
and I guess unless you've, because you might want to change what the room size is, or you might want to, I don't know what this
Yeah.
process would be. It's not as if that camera would stay the same place. So how do you time lapse in Cinema 4D? Is essentially the.
Technically, you couldn't just take like there's like these montages in films where they build something up. You have like a camera path, and then you see just like people assembling a car or something. And you could do that with a 3D scene as well, but it would be so much work because you have to. So what I would do, I would just work on the scene, and then have that camera path. Do like at the end of each day, I will render that camera path, and then I just cut it together and be like, blah, 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 and you see
Of
that
course.
move and everything.
So you just render
But
it.
it's so much work. That's so much work. It's just not worth it.
I think you deserve a break, considering you've been hard at work for a long time.
Yeah. Oh no, it's just like so yeah, when I finished the project, we got the dog. Like it's just like 5 weeks ago, 4 or 5 weeks ago, we got that dog, and then I said, yeah, we'll just take a little break of 1 or 2 weeks, but I'm at week 3 now, and it's still like I'm like today I spent a lot of time per day like just looking over things I want to do next. Like I am pretty sure I have nailed down what the next project's gonna be. It's gonna be a gas station.
Oh.
And yeah, from the outside with like a diner, like some artsy American diner.
Yeah.
And so right now I go over like some things I'm not like sure if I can, like there's like a lot of technical questions. So where is that? Do I need like the environment? Is that obviously it's like an outside shot, right? So do we see what we see from the environment? Will it be like hills? It's like more in the desert? Is it raining? Is it actually raining, or did it just rain? So if rain is in the air, that's a whole different level of fucked up problems that creates. Then there's the question, okay, if it's not raining, so it just recently rained and everything is full of puddles and it's wet, that's also fucked up, but it's not as fucked up as it's currently raining. And then there's like, okay, maybe we want snow, like slush, when there's like on the parking lot and there's like a lot of cars and you have like that muddy slow and it's all ugh. That's also super fucked up to create. And then there's like all these things you would technically would be cool to do them, but it's fucked up. So yeah, it's just a lot of guesswork and like figuring stuff out and like thinking through that, and like it's a lot of times where I sit here and be like, yeah, okay, and then I did that and that and that, and go through the workflows that would be required to pull that off, and then we're like, okay, I need like super big maps so that it's super high poly. When that's that high poly, that creates a problem, because like there's like the metric when you start a project and after 1 week you can't move the editor camera anymore because it's already so high poly. That's also always a bad sign. That's
Okay.
just like usually that okay, I can't move the camera should be like when 70% of the image is already done, then that's okay. But if it's in the first week, that's a big no. That's a big red flag when that happens. So yeah, and there's like a million questions. You have that parking lot. I already did a pretty decent parking lot, as you might know, but like I want to raise the bar a little bit. So that means that the next parking lot is like that's 7 years ago. I obviously, when I do a parking lot now, it should reflect that 7 years that have passed. So it has to look better. So if I create snow slush on the parking lot, how do I do that? It's a big space with car tire tracks and everything. Does that really function? I only can use displacement for 8K maps. So 8K maps for that big of a place, it's too little. I would need to use 16K maps, but Octane can't do that. Octane is limited to 8K. So what do? I don't know. I can break it down into several maps and push them together or something. But the problem is if I have an 8K map, it's 32-bit as an EXR, would probably take 500 megabytes of VRAM. So I use 6 different maps, and it's like 6 textures. That is 3 gigabytes of VRAM. That's too much for a whole project. So that's all the stuff I go through in my head right now. So that's like planning and plotting and figuring stuff out, and I will do that until I'm like in a place where I'm like certain, okay, I can pull that off. I have like everything evaluated. And then I collect that and I like make notes and everything, and then I will start on the project. And that's usually what I do before I start a project. And like, and that can actually, like the visual building of that, like a gas station, for example. I had that idea like that I want to do that one day, probably 4 or 5 years now. So that's always like something that's lingering, like, okay, you could do a gas station, because that's like on your inspirational Pinterest board for like a decade now. So you can, at some point, you will do a gas station. You know that. There's also like, I want to do a forest scene at some point, or something with knights, some medieval shit, right? That's also in the like 10 years, maybe I will do that. So and yeah, and the LAN party, for example, I had that in my head for 4 or 5 years before I did it. And yeah, now it's time for the gas station. And all the technical eventualities will be solved in my head before I started.
Well, I hope by the time once you have finished the gas station, or even during, we're able to catch up again midpoint, because I have taken 2 hours and 20 minutes of your time, or 2 hours and 22 minutes of your time.
Oh, really? Doesn't feel like it.
No, absolutely not.
I was just talking the whole time.
But yes. I think I would let you go and hopefully try and just say a massive thank you to you for wanting to speak out, and I hope you've enjoyed this conversation to some degree. And just for everyone that is watching, could you please just let everyone know where they can find you, where they can reach you?
I'm on Instagram. I'm Cornelius Dammrich on Instagram. I'm Planet Zomax on Twitter. I am my website is corneliusdammrich.com. You can find me on all the major social media platforms. And yeah, if you have questions, hit me up. If you have job proposals, also hit me up. But be prepared, I might turn them down. And if I talked bullshit and did mistakes, you can correct me on social media.
There you go. And go on to your Patreon and also sign up for the what is it? WTF bundle. That's the that's the big one.
Yes. But the Patreon is like, maybe don't, like, there's not much on that Patreon. So it's maybe don't do that. But, yeah, you can also go to YouTube. Most of the cool stuff is on YouTube.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you so much, mate. I really appreciate your time. That was so much fun.
I really hope you enjoyed this episode, and a massive thank you to Cornelius for an incredible discussion. These conversations are aimed to help anyone learning 3D to peer into the behind the scenes with a pro and understand how they build beautiful 3D images and videos. If you enjoyed this, I have 2 already waiting for you, one with Dino Muhik and Adam Spizak, both as interesting as the other. Thanks again, and as we touched on so many different topics, please let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next one.